Aloha! Welcome to the Live Ukulele podcast. My name is Brad Bordessa. Thank you for joining me today. In this episode, I'm going to share with you about my new ukulele video course called Left Hand Technique for Ukulele. This is my pride and joy and is now the flagship product available on liveukulele.com. It's the best set of lessons I've ever done. I feel like it's the best content that I've ever put together. It's all concepts that are things that I've been teaching over the years and kind of compiling and have become sort of my version of ukulele and what I think is most important for players to be working on and to be learning. And so I share them in the course. So we're going to have a look at what that is all about, and I'll share with you some tips and different things that you can take away from this podcast and go apply to your playing right away without even needing to go through the course. If you are interested in learning more about what I teach and what I do, and also to get a discount on the Left Hand Technique course, I invite you to sign up for my newsletter. You can go to liveukulele.com/sign up and put your email in there and you'll be added to my mailing list. This is the best way for me to be directly in touch with you. I don't really do social media. I'm really painfully old school as far as that goes. And I really just like the opportunity to, have correspondence through email. That's kind of what I do at this point. And so if you want to be part of that loop, please go subscribe. And I'll be in touch. So before we get started, I want to share with you a little bit of a background of how the Left Hand Technique project came around, because I don't think I was doing the podcast when I first released the Left Hand Technique for Ukulele ebook. So there is an ebook, 63 pages of a PDF that you can download, and contains many of the subjects that I have explored in the course. But one of the requests that I got from people who had the ebook and enjoyed working their way through it was, I wish I could see you playing these things. And so I briefly considered making just some example videos to go hand in hand with the ebook. But the way I roll is kind of overdoing everything. Everything becomes a bigger project than I ever intend, but it also ends up being more rewarding, more enjoyable. It's a way for me to share in a more in-depth way. And so this was one of those projects. Is Left Hand Technique started out as this ebook. I heard that people wanted the lessons. I started percolating on the idea, thinking about it, and I just started putting together an index of the concepts that I wanted to cover, most of the things from the ebook, plus some new things that I've been kind of teaching and working on and thinking about, things that I'm excited about. And I thought I would put it all together in videos. So the ebook is still useful. It's kind of like an encyclopedia of these different ways of navigating the fretboard and also the articulations. It's illustrated with pictures and tablature examples. But now the video course is a much more in-depth sequential lesson plan that I've put together that goes through, there's 50 videos, and it ends up being over 9 hours of video content, which when I went to do the grand tally of how much is actually here, I was pleasantly surprised to see that, there's 9 hours. And with practice and everything factored in, that is enough content to keep the huge majority of people busy for many, many years. But, the idea isn't necessarily just to overwhelm you with content. It's to present you with things that I think are a really helpful foundation of understanding how the instrument works and how you can play music easier on the ukulele. So I approached it from that standpoint of building a foundation and then slowly ratcheting it up through other techniques and different ways of navigating that can be helpful and can build on each other. So that was one thing I felt like the ebook kind of lacked, was any sort of structure and sequence. And this course, I very intentionally, it has a beginner section and it has an intro section even. And, you learn how to hold the ukulele properly, all the considerations you should make as far as posture, and then moves up into the beginner section. And we talk about like the super basics of really examining how you touch a fret, how you hold the string down, which sounds really boring and basic. But for me, it's really the root of most of the problems that you see is people just not understanding how that works. And so by diving into that, I feel like even though it might be something that seems super basic, it's universal to all levels. Everybody needs to be able to hold down the frets as best as possible. And even if you're an advanced player, I think that there is lots to be gained from the beginner videos because there's things that I present that you probably haven't considered before, or ways that I explain it maybe that kind of unlock your brain and let you go, oh, aha, that makes sense. And I can think about a way to make it better. Because as I say on the podcast all the time, and in all my teaching, the only difference between a beginner player and an advanced player is the skill at which they execute their notes. It's just that the advanced player plays the notes at a higher level. It's the same mechanics. It's the same notes. Nobody gets anything extra. You don't get, 5 new notes when you graduate from intermediate to advanced. It's all there for beginners to have as well. But in examining these things at a beginner level, I feel like it's helpful for beginners to see where their problems are, but also it's kind of a window for advanced players to really see maybe some things that they missed and to kind of look at their technique from a different angle and make sure that they're playing as efficiently as is humanly possible. Once we get through the very basics of fretting and, different ways that you can get cleaner notes with less energy, the course starts to talk about kind of organization styles on the fretboard and the chromatic scale, how to understand playing chromatically. A lot of folks don't think of the chromatic scale as being anything important or useful. It's just like, it's all the notes. And it is. It's all 12 notes in Western music. That is the chromatic scale. Chroma, I believe, is from Greek, and it means color. So it's the colorful scale because you get all the notes, all of the flavors available in music. But if you know what the chromatic scale is and how it works and how it's linked together, what it can really teach you is how to get anywhere on the fretboard. Even if you haven't memorized the fretboard, it can allow you to know the location of every single note on the fretboard. You can deduce it from knowing the chromatic scale. So I'll walk you through it really quick because this is an easy thing to talk through on the podcast since you can't see me. The chromatic scale is basically all of your natural notes, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then after G it goes around again, right? Between each of those natural notes, there's what's called an enharmonic, and the enharmonic is the sharp or the flat that lives between most of the natural notes. So from A, instead of moving up directly to B, you would actually move A to A sharp. A sharp is the note between A and B. And sharp means you move up a half step or 1 fret. So if you're playing on your open A string, you would move up 1 fret to play A sharp on the first fret. You can also approach it from the B side. You can flat the note. So if I'm playing a B on the 2nd fret of the A string, I can go down to the B flat harmonic. It's the same exact pitch, the same note location, 1st fret, as the A sharp, but it's called something different. So as you move through the chromatic scale, the enharmonic note can be named after the note below it or the note above it. And depending on which way you approach it, it's either going to be called sharp or flat. But you can always deduce the name because it's named after its neighbors. So you have A, And then after A, you have A sharp or B flat. So A sharp or B flat, and then B. And then after B, if you were to follow the logic of natural note in harmonic note, natural note in harmonic note, which occurs in most of the chromatic scale, you're actually going to play another natural note, because this is where one of the exceptions to the natural note in harmonic note occurs. And the exception is B to C and E to F. When I'm teaching the chromatic scale, I'll say this like 20 times in a class. B to C, E to F. And I always get everybody to try and say it with me. And one of my students, very cleverly, I don't know where he picked it up. He said he learned it from somewhere. Very cleverly named it Bunny Catcher Elmer Fudd as the acronym that you could remember that by. Bunny Catcher Elmer Fudd, B to C, E to F. Those are the two natural note pairs that occur in the chromatic scale. And so when you move from B, there is no B sharp. There is no actual B sharp pitch. B sharp would actually just be C. So you go directly to the C, and likewise, as you're moving from C downwards a half step, you actually go down to just a B note, bunny catcher. And then as you continue on from there, from the C moving upwards, again, you go back to your natural note in harmonic note pattern. And so from C, you'd play C and then C sharp or D flat, and then D, and then D sharp or E flat, and then E, and E is the other half of Bunny Catcher Elmer Fudd, right? So from E, there is no E sharp note, no E sharp pitch. If you play E sharp, you actually end up playing what is an F pitch. And same goes for the downwards direction. F always moves downwards to E. So Bunny Catcher Elmer Fudd, if you can remember that, you can figure out how the chromatic scale works. And so just to finish it off, from F, going up a half step, one fret, you'd go to F sharp or G flat. G, and then G sharp or A flat, and then A. And you're back to the beginning. Once you get up to the 12th fret, the octave repeats, or you're up to the next octave, and that same note starts the pattern again fresh, just like you did from the open string. So altogether, from the very bottom, starting on the A sharp or B flat, B, C, bunny catcher, C sharp or D flat, D, D sharp or E flat, E, Elmer Fudd to F, F sharp or G flat, G, G sharp or A flat, and then A. You go back to the octave above, and you would start everything fresh. So just by understanding that little bit of the chromatic scale, you can find your place anywhere on the fretboard as long as you know the names of the strings. You can work your way through it, count your way up, and figure it out. For instance, if you wanted to figure out what the 8th fret on the E string is, pause the podcast, see if you can figure it out yourself. 8th fret on the E string. You know that the E string is the E, so you would just count up your chromatic scale, working through natural note and harmonic note, natural note and harmonic note, except for Bunny Catcher Elmer Fudd. If you keep that in mind, you should be able to figure out what the note is on the 8th fret. So pause the podcast. It's not a video, it's a podcast. Pause the podcast and see what you can come up with. Okay, we're back. If you didn't pause, we're still back anyways. So if you work your way up from the E, it doesn't matter where you start in the chromatic scale. The pattern is always going to be the same. You just count your way up, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. After G, it goes back around again. And in between each of those, you have an inharmonic note that is named by its half-step neighbors, or you have bunny catcher Elmer Fudd, in which case B and C go together and E and F go together. So if you work your way up from E, you have open E, Elmer Fudd to F on the first fret, and then you have F sharp or G flat, G, G sharp or A flat, A sharp or B flat. Now we're on to the 7th fret, which would be B, and then bunny catcher, C, which is the 8th fret. So we've figured out that the 8th fret is a C note just from working through the chromatic scale. So you don't have to memorize the fretboard to know where notes are or to figure out where notes are. And it always surprises me that people can't figure this out, or they do it in a difficult way where they try and work it through scales. And I would never claim that the chromatic scale is a fast way to figure out what the note in a given location is, because you have to count your way through it, at least at first. And that just by itself takes some time. And so it's not super efficient, but it is simple and straightforward, and you don't have to guess. You don't have to guess. You don't have to try and remember where a neighbor note is, and then, okay, is it a half step? Is it a whole step away? None of that really matters. You just go fret, 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 count your way through the chromatic scale until you get to where you want to go, and boom, that's the name of the note. And the great thing about this, if you figure out where notes are in this manner, is that you're going to eventually start to get familiar with where the notes actually live. And just kind of by accident, you're going to end up memorizing the fretboard. You're going to get used to knowing where things are. And instead of needing to count, okay, what's the 8th fret note on the E string? Instead of needing to count all the way through the chromatic scale, maybe you've found that note enough times, or you've passed by it as you're figuring out other notes. You know that that's a C note. And you kind of have a reference point on your map, your mental map of the fretboard. And so just by finding notes and by doing it in this manner, you are going to be able to figure out what the names are. You're going to get used to them because you're thinking about the note names, right? You're not thinking about the frets. You just fret, 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 fret. You don't have to skip anywhere. You don't have to think about what fret you're going to because you're just ascending one fret at a time. There's nothing challenging about making that happen under your fingers or in your head. What is the challenge is that you have to focus on the note names, which in this era of tablature is not done a whole lot. A lot of times we kind of play by numbers, as it were. And so being able to play by notes is what actually helps you memorize the fretboard. And in the long run, it's going to help you know where the actual notes are, as opposed to just knowing what number your finger goes on, what fret number you are supposed to play. So that's a great example of one of the foundational things that I present in left-hand technique for ukulele that I think is something that is kind of a unique angle. It's not that it's revolutionary. It's not that nobody ever talks about it, but I'm presenting things in these video lessons that I feel don't get attention from the right angle. You know, maybe people teach the chromatic scale, but they teach the chromatic scale like for the sake of teaching the chromatic scale. It never feels like it's actually for a purpose or to help inform other parts of your playing, which I feel like anything you learn, you should be able to immediately plug it into other parts of what you're doing. And so that's the approach that I have for all of these different videos. And so from the chromatic scale, I move on to talking about how to organize your fingerings on the fretboard, kind of position playing, but also shifting, and how to kind of know what fingers to use without being told exactly what fingers to use, being able to deduce what a common sense finger pattern would be to play some sort of a melody across the fretboard. And as we go through the lessons, one of the things that's not in the ebook that I want to always try and include for relevance and for context is songs. And so throughout the course, there are 9 songs that I've chosen for really my own interest because I have to teach them. So I want to be teaching something that's interesting and is beautiful music that I like to play. If I have to do multiple takes, I don't want to be totally bummed out about it. So they're lovely songs that I feel connected to. For example, actually the first song that we learn in the course is Hawaii Aloha, which is a beautiful melody that if you have ever been to Hawaii or any like ukulele gatherings here, you might have heard it. It's a song that we sing at the end of gatherings as kind of a goodbye and a celebration of Hawaii. And I don't ever see anybody teaching the melody, so I thought it would be interesting to show you how to play the melody and also to use kind of an interesting angle on playing the melody, which is playing the melody on a single string. So you're forced to see the linearity of the notes and how far apart they are. It's not necessarily practical, but I think it's an interesting exercise in visualizing what is happening and what is possible and what is made easier by other techniques that we'll learn down the road as we go, right? It's that make it simple, make it really straightforward, even if it's not the best way to do it. By making it super straightforward, it is, not confusing, but it's also illustrating something that you don't normally get to see, which is how far each note is from each other. And when you go and move on to position playing and getting to play those notes next to each other, it's harder to see what the distance is because you're moving across strings. But for Hawaii Aloha, we learn it on a single string. There's also Star of the County Down, which is a lovely Irish folk tune that I have loved for a long time. It's another beautiful melody. We also play that on the open string, but because we're sequential here in the course, it builds upon what we've done, and in that lesson we add a hammer-on. Other songs are the Hawaiian classic Mauna Loa. Of course, there's Canon in D, the classical classic. There is Maui Girl, which is a super fun, upbeat, kind of rousing. It's actually an old Hapahaole tune. It was written in the late 1800s, but it sounds a little bit more modern. It was ahead of its time, if you will. And then I also, this year, Tonight You Belong to Me, not the Steve Martin version, but like the actual original waltz version of Tonight You Belong to Me, that came into the public domain. And so all these songs are in the public domain just because I don't want to headache with trying to figure out the licensing. And it's always exciting when the new year rolls around and you have access to another great song to be able to teach. And Tonight You Belong to Me is one of those.
You look so sweet, dear, can't you see how I feel? I love you still, I always will. You have the same old appeal. Oh, you belong to somebody else. Tonight you belong to me. Oh, we're apart, you're part.
You can listen to a really old recording by Gene Austin on YouTube to get a sense for kind of the version that I taught. You've probably heard it before. If you didn't hear it in the jerk, it's one that is around. And then, of course, there's Aloha Oi and Sanoi, written by our queen, Liliuokalani, here in Hawaii, Hawaii's last queen, a fantastic songwriter and a prolific songwriter. And I always try and include her work anytime I'm teaching, just because I think that it's, the melodies are so beautiful, but also it's important to make sure that people know these songs, to realize what a cultural treasure we had and what a cultured place Hawaii was, where the queen was actually writing some of our very best songs. For these videos, I kind of redid my entire studio setup. If you have seen my Sixth Sense course, or even the promo video for the Sixth Sense course, I actually was filming in a different room. And for this new course, I realized that I just really need to be able to control my lighting to get a more professional look. And so I moved into a different room where I can have blinds on the windows. And I used all pretty much canned lighting for the new course. It looks so much better. So much better. I was really excited with how well the video quality turned out. It's the same cameras and everything, but just by improving the lighting and by improving the setting, it was just a profound improvement as far as the video look. And in this room, it's also a lot quieter than the other room, and I was able to use one of my studio mics to get an even cleaner sound of, my voice and my ukulele teaching in the space. So quality-wise, it's a big step up. I feel like this course is where I'm happy with where I've gotten to. I'm a real perfectionist and kind of picky about production values and quality kinds of things. And so with the Sixth Sense course, it was good. I don't have any regrets because I learned a lot from it. But I feel like, and the content is I'm really happy with the content. I think the content is super strong. But just from a production standpoint, there were some things that I was never quite super happy about with the look of that Sixth Sense course. So I ironed out all those kind of wants that I never achieved with that course. Now I have achieved them with this new course. And I'm really looking forward to anytime I want to create more videos, make a new course or something nice for YouTube. I have the setup, I have the space, I know exactly how to set it up. It's going to make life a lot easier moving into the future. Just knowing how it's all supposed to go and how bright the lights should be and where the lights should be and, what glasses I should wear so I don't get glare. There's a lot of considerations and a lot of trial and error that goes into this kind of a thing. And so all that should be out of the way, and in the future it'll be even faster. But suffice to say, the new course looks fabulous. It sounds fabulous. I'm really happy with how it came out production-wise. And of course, the lesson content is all stuff that I've been itching to share with the world for quite a long time. Something that the ebook really focused on that I was actually kind of surprised in the course of making the lessons for this new video course, I found myself not teaching it quite as abundantly as I thought I would, and that is articulations. Articulations were kind of the source inspiration for the ebook. The ebook actually started out as just kind of a very small, 10 or 15 page booklet of how to play hammer-ons, how to play slides, how to bend, how to play harmonics, kind of those, they're called articulations. It's different ways of kind of creating a note or transferring between notes. And so that was really the core of the Left Hand Technique ebook. And as I started creating the content for the Left Hand Technique for Ukulele video course, I realized that the articulations, they're important and it's something that I cover and I did want to cover, but there were actually so many more things that I was able to grow around them to make the content more kind of musically dense and hopefully foundationally helpful. And so those articulations by themselves, there are a number of videos on them. There's hammer-ons, pull-offs. Each of them have a dedicated lesson, slides, vibrato, bending, natural harmonics, artificial harmonics. But really, it got to a point where there's so much other content that goes beyond that they kind of got surprisingly, I won't say drowned out because they're still an important component of the lessons, but they got, I don't know, the power shift was kind of interesting as I realized that there was actually a lot more to say about other things than these articulations, which I think is what people actually wanted to see videos on. Like, well, how do you play harmonics? I want to see a video of how to do that. And I think a video would be very helpful. And so you get those videos, but there's also just a lot more musical content of how to how to navigate the fretboard, how to think about different things, how to work across positions. And I'm really happy that the articulations kind of became a little bit more of a complementary thing as opposed to being the main focus. I think it really speaks to the viability of the entire course as a whole and what is presented. As far as it goes, the levels of the course are separated out as there's an intro section, which is just very general basic stuff that applies to everybody, like posture and positioning, and also how to use a metronome. And then the beginner section, there is an intermediate section, and there's also an advanced section. So we cover the entire gamut, and especially if you're a beginner player, you'll have lots of content to kind of grow into as you practice and improve. But how do you know if you're going to be overwhelmed or not? And I think that the answer is pretty straightforward. I intend this for advanced beginners, not beginners, because just in the way that I approach things, we're kind of going into the nitty-gritty details that would perhaps be too much too soon if you're a complete newbie, right? When you're a complete newbie, you have to choose your battles and choose what you're focusing your attention on. And really at that phase, you want to just be playing chords and strumming a little bit and maybe picking some melodies and just getting used to how the instrument works and trying to just, make it happen at all. Just get it out there, play the music somehow, anyway, even if it's bad, you just do it, right? And so with the course and the detail that we go into, I feel like that is a little bit more choosing a specific battle, and it's not necessarily appropriate for complete beginners, which is why I say advanced beginners. If you know how to strum, most of your major chords, most of your minor chords, most of your seventh chords maybe, and you can play a song all the way through fairly easily strumming, or if you pick any melodies, if you can work your way through it and stay on time and just kind of have a grasp on how music and the instrument work together, then I feel like you're going to be a lot better equipped to jump into the beginner section and really kind of get what I'm trying to present. Everything between there and advanced is going to hopefully blow the doors off your world, and you're going to just be absolutely amazed by all the things that you learn and the different kind of aspects that maybe you never considered before that now are presented to you. And as far as advanced goes, how far up the level chain it goes, if you're a really expert player, there are so few advanced players that I didn't get super crazy with the advanced section. There are 13 lessons as opposed to intermediate has 19 lessons and beginner has 15 lessons. But with the advanced section, I feel like, well, first of all, some of the stuff in there that I put together was hard for me to play. So, take that for what it's worth. Look me up on YouTube, see me actually playing a song and judge my skills for what it is. There's a couple things that I kind of went, oh, this is going to take me a second to get to be able to play it for the lesson. But then beyond that, I feel like there's going to be something interesting, even if you are playing Jake songs or whatever. Hopefully there are concepts that will inform you as you go. But just for instance, in the advanced section, you have things like dampening, which is a really kind of nitty-gritty detail that, most people don't think about. There is a number of things on like combining articulations, combining hammer-ons and pull-offs and slides and bends together. And then there is kind of a revisit of canon in D, where I intentionally make it very convoluted and hard to play with all kinds of different articulations, just to kind of highlight the ways that you can really create a different feel in a simple melody by kind of altering how you approach every note. And so that was a super challenge for me to play through. There's also natural harmonics, things like pinky muting, and then kind of my capstone lesson on extreme sequencing, which for the longest time has been my go-to when I don't know what to practice. If I am just kind of in a funk and I feel like, oh, I'm bored, I've kind of like got all this other stuff dialed in, I will go and always return to extreme sequencing. What am I? How do I string notes together in a pattern and then mutate that pattern through a scale or through a section of the fretboard to force myself to play things I otherwise never in a million years would think to play. And so I feel like that's a super powerful lesson because it's going to give you the tools to really create a lot of content for yourself to practice. And if you're practicing extreme sequencing kinds of things and really, really drilling that, you're going to kind of, you're going to have a lot to work on into the future. And hopefully those tools will help you grow. So as far as tapping out the advanced contents, I would say that, unless you've been out performing and you're practicing for 5 hours a day, there's probably some advanced information in there that you would like. But if you find that it's really boring or it's not your cup of tea or whatever, there is a 30-day money-back guarantee. I invite you to try it out, see what you think. And if you're not impressed or if the content doesn't fit for you or you're more advanced than the course goes or you're more beginner than the course goes, then just let me know and I'll refund your money. And that's that. No hard feelings. But I think it's important for folks to feel like, it's not a forever commitment. If it doesn't work and it's not for you, I don't want you involved with it. Honestly, that's the truth, because then I would have to, if you're a really beginner, I would have to kind of go out of my way to help you through the contents, and maybe you're just not ready for it. And if you're advanced, I would have to be, or if you're like extra super advanced, I would have to be adding new content, to accommodate you. So if it's just not a match and you don't fit in the skill levels, that's fine. Take advantage of that guarantee there and just shoot me an email. But I guess I should mention at this point that what you're listening to now on the 7th of May is the official launch day for the masses, the general public. And because it's launch day, it's special, and I am offering 20% off the course's normal price. You can find a link in the show description to go check that out and learn more. The coupon code is included on the sales page, so you'll have a hard time missing it. And when you click on Buy Now, the code will already be applied to your cart. So it's a no-brainer. The 20% is already applied. Go check it out. There's a lot more literature on the sales page. If you have any questions, there's some Q&A kinds of things, and there is a sample lesson that you can go check out. There's also a little promo video that I put together with some fun like pan shots. I found my brother's camera slider, and I got that out and did some moody lighting and put one of my ukuleles up and took some fancy shots. I felt very Steven Spielberg about it. But anyways, I invite you to go at least check out the page, see what's there, see if you think that there is content that would be of interest to you. I certainly think that the course is full of good vitamins and vegetables kinds of content. It's the stuff that you probably should be learning. Whether you think it's things that you should be learning, that's another question, and that's where the discrepancy is going to lie, right? But as far as me as a teacher, you as a student, this is the best of what I think everybody should be practicing and should be working on, and what I think is probably going to be most helpful for you into the future. Check it out. Give it a try. Get that 20% off. That is going to last until the 15th of May, that 20% deal, and then it's going to go back to just your flat list price rate. Thanks for joining me on this kind of self-promo episode. I hope you liked the little mini lesson on the chromatic scale and got a little bit of insight into how I think about teaching and how I've come to present these video lessons. I'm really quite proud of it. I think it's great. I hope that it helps people. I think it will help people, and I would love to see you in the lessons. There's also a community discussion area, so if you have any questions about the content, feel free to drop a line in there, and I can give you some sort of an answer for your question or suggest a resource or a practice method, whatever it might be, to help you out. And then in the future, other students can refer back to those questions and answers that have already been asked and answered. And, we can all together help iron out the details and make sure that all of the aspects are covered. And if there are any super glaring questions that come up again and again, I'll have to make another video to fill in the gap. It is going to be an ever-evolving kind of a product. There's always something to change and always something to improve upon in that sort of an ecosystem. And I just today actually started my document of, things to improve, things to add, things to change, and just to round out the content so that it can be the best it possibly can be. The Live Ukulele podcast is published on the first and third Saturday of every month. I appreciate you tuning in today. Be well out there. Check out the course. If you have any questions, please feel free to shoot me an email, brad@liveukulele.com. That will reach me. And yeah, I do wish you the very best. I'll catch you in the next episode. Aloha.